Okay, so just find a comfortable position in your chair, and this isn't necessarily looking for the sort of postures that we want to practice in Tai Chi. Excuse me, but just giving yourself and your body a chance to settle in. That might involve sitting right back and angling backwards just a little bit to get the support for your back. Taking a couple of slow, gentle breaths. And when or if you do move into the sort of, if you like, what we might call the Tai Chi postures, do so very gently and with this feeling of what it's like just to sit comfortably and quietly as one of the sort of reference points for your posture, because I think when we look at the Tai Chi postures, they're actually quite strong, and they can require cultivation, conditioning, but the outcome should be in the end that they are comfortable for us. When they cease to be comfortable, you'll start to stiffen up, and you can't really do Tai Chi then anyway, so it can be self-defeating. So as always, very gently, taking your time, just rubbing your hands together and tapping gently over your face. And then work up over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. And on the other side. And the upper part of your chest. And then down to your belly. And your legs. Then just gently turning your head a little side to side. And then place your hands either on the front part of your shoulders or just on the back of your head. This isn't a particularly comfortable position, but what I want you to do is just put your elbows forwards and backwards a little bit. I should go from this side. It's not really a Qigong exercise. It's based on a technique from Chinese massage. And there's two things to note about this. Really both concerned with what's happening in your rib cage, how your sternum sinks and pushes out. And this is useful to think about in terms of breathing, which we'll have a closer look at in a few moments. And the other thing is to feel the connection between your elbows and your arms moving, and this whole area of chest and upper back, which is, there's some big muscles there, and there's a very powerful energy in that area, and these movements are connected to each other. And again, this is something that I'll follow up in a few moments. If your shoulders are getting tight, take your hands down, especially if you've got your hands a bit behind your head. And again, the main thing is just to feel the movement in your rib cage. I've been doing this with groups quite a lot recently in the heat we've been having. When we look at the health warnings that are going out for people, one of the target groups is people with respiratory problems. So you don't have to have a diagnosed problem to realise that the hot weather can make you feel very congested in your chest. We can feel that way anyway, but in fact, when we do this movement, you can feel movement in the rib cage. The rib cage is actually a hollow shell. It's actually quite supple in terms of bones, and we often kind of lose that awareness. Now bring your hands back to its position in front of your shoulders and circling your elbows around. And again, just trying to feel that connection between the movement in your arms and what's happening in your chest and upper back. And like many of these connections in Tai Chi, this is a two-way connection. So moving our arms can get that movement in the rib cage is a very straightforward way. More subtle if we bring our attention and our intention to what's happening in ribs, chest, upper back, we realise that those movements can actually help the movements of the arms and take some of the strain away from the shoulders. Going forwards. We can use this approach with many parts of the body, gradually building up this picture of our body moving as one complete unit, with the effort spread more evenly through our body. Bringing your hands down and rotating your arms, palm forwards and back. And again, when the palms turn forwards, we may feel that opening a bit more subtle at that point, and perhaps less emphasis on muscles, but also feeling the skin, the fascia, and so on and so forth, extending and contracting. And then winding our arms around. So we as I said, we build up this picture of connection, of pathways of movement. And the more we become aware of them, the more we can bring an intentionality to them. And then back the other way. And those pathways are made up in many ways: muscles, tendons, ligaments, fascial layers, the movement itself, the energy. Now, if you're still sitting back before you move forwards, or if you're forwards, move back a bit so your back's supported. Going back to breathing, just placing your hands on your belly. And when we have our back supported in this way, this is a much more effective exercise. And just feeling for a few rounds as you breathe in, a slight push out in the area just below your navel. If you've done this with me before, that's fine. It's always interesting to revisit this. And then on the solar plexus, where you'll probably feel it as a bigger movement. And then onto the upper part of your chest. And just aware of that movement in your sternum. I sometimes describe this as being like you've got one of these folding walls or folding doors, how the hinge sort of drops into the back as you fold the structure in, and then it pushes out. So again, we get this movement in the rib cage. So now, bringing your hands down again, one hand on your belly, one hand on your solar plexus. And what we want to try and feel is the expansion beneath the belly first of all, followed very quickly afterwards by what's happening in our solar plexus. And then try a few rounds with the top hand again on the upper part of your chest. So the expansion will be belly, solar plexus, and then the chest. This is the abdominal breathing or the bellows breathing. It creates space in the body for the in-breath. So we can feel that connection right up through the upper part of the body and how it really helps with filling the lungs without straining. So that's, we wouldn't do too many of those to start off with, but that's a useful way to just acclimatise yourself, as it were, to how we look to be able to breathe, both in Tai Chi and in our everyday life. Now, however, if you can, if you're comfortable with this, moving your weight forward. So, thing to recognise here, in regard to what we've just been doing, is your back no longer has the direct support of the back of the chair. So the support comes from underneath our feet, legs and hips. And this is where we want to be more aware of posture. It remains strong in the back, but we don't want to sense strain in the back. What we might find that we're doing, and this is quite common, is that we've tightened up in the front of our body, belly or chest or somewhere like that. And of course, that then would interfere with that breathing process. So we find the link between posture and breathing, and letting your weight drop down through your body, angling forward slightly so that your weight falls in that space between your feet and your hips. And at the same time, as you're able to release some of the tightness in the big muscles of the upper body, once again, feeling the rib cage as a space that doesn't need you to stiffen up around. Feeling also the support that your back gets from your spine, and that the whole of your upper body gets from your pelvis. And of course, your feet and your legs are very much supporting your upper body as well. So this is where we find a direct link between what we were just looking at in terms of breathing and our posture. It's still a strong posture, particularly in our back. And so as you begin to get to a point where maybe your body's tiring a little bit, it will be reasonable to suppose that that's going to have an effect on your ability to maintain that breathing. So we have to find a balance there, and this has to be practiced. But now from this position, tilting forwards a little bit, rocking forwards on your pelvis, and then principally using your feet and your legs to push yourself back up. So try not to, again, pull your belly in, tighten your chest, your shoulders or your back. And we can see very quickly that, again, referring back to what we were just looking at with our breathing, then the sort of logical place, if you like, to breathe in would be as we come to the upright position. We no longer have that pressure on the belly, for instance, and we can get that feeling of a rise and expansion working through the body. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the breathing is going to feel comfortable. So there are various factors here to gently bring in. So we shouldn't force the breathing, we shouldn't hold our breath, strain for the breath. These are points to refer back to occasionally. But always respecting that relationship, that link between posture and breathing. What we may find is, And again, this can work both ways. So posture enables breathing. But when we start to get a sense of that bellows breathing, that abdominal breathing, an intention to breathe that way may have an influence on our body's posture. We can sometimes feel the body changing how it's moving and how it's holding itself in response to the intention to do something in particular, in this case, the breathing. Different ways will probably suit you at different times. Now turn in just a little bit. If your back starts to stiffen up, sit back. Make sure you get some support for your back, particularly the lower part of your back, the bottom part of the chair, back of your chair. And then in the other direction. And then turn in the centre of your body, gently drawing your head and shoulders around him. Well, start at first, and maybe carry on like that. It's quite a small circle. You want to feel that the circle that your head is going through could fit comfortably inside the stance, that square formed with your feet and your hips at the corner. Maybe finding as you sink down and release a bit more, a slight increase in the range of movement. Go back the other way. You don't necessarily have to increase that range of movement every time you do this. If that, you don't really want to hold that as the only goal, because sometimes when we do a smaller movement and the body remains softer, we get an insight into how the energy is flowing through the body. Coming back to the centre. Stepping out. Put your heel and the ball of your foot down. Press into the floor gently. Planting the foot. Having planted the foot, follow up with your weight movement. And what you may find, probably will find after a while, is that with the foot extended, when you go forwards, you're going further forwards. You've got somewhere to take your weight. So one of the ways that we would extend our range of movement is to start with the base. Try that with your other foot forwards. And then weight following. And transferring from side to side. One more time. Coming back, bringing your feet back underneath your knees, and again, finding a comfortable posture with using whatever support from the chair is appropriate, remembering how it can feel when your body's comfortable, and there's that sense of space within the movement that in itself, space within the body that allows for movement like breathing, circulation, that flow of energy. Just be aware if you are sitting right back, when we come forwards, it's a slight upward movement first of all. So just be careful you don't strain. So now a lot of that we want to just allow to rest in the background of our attention. We don't want to keep thinking about, I've got to do this with this part of the body, or breathe this way, or anything like that, because that can become quite kind of frantic if we're not careful. Practice these ideas in your own time, and as they become more normal for you, they'll sort of spill over into the other exercises, hopefully into your daily lives. So now, letting your arms rest down, palms of your hands facing forwards, bird folds its wings. Next time you go forwards, leaving your hands facing palm back and fisherman castanet. So the more you become familiar with the movements in the routines, the more subtle our awareness becomes. And so, for instance, just bringing your memory back to when we were doing this exercise and feeling the relationship between our arms moving and what's happening in chest and upper back. There's a little bit of this going on in this movement. If I exaggerate, when I go back, my chest seems to open. This really is exaggerated, but the sternum seems to push out. I go forwards, and as I settle in my front feet, the sternum draws back. And you see what that's doing to my shoulders, and that helps to bring my arms through. So I can feel that movement in the rib cage, feel that energy in the rib cage, really transmitting into my arms. Still it remains that a driving force here for the movement is the movement of the weight. But it has to get from sort of like your hips, as it were, to your arms. So it's always going to go via the upper body in one way or another. And how that happens can be very influential on your arms and vice versa. Next time you go forwards, change into rolling the ball. Again, we feel that movement expanding upwards through, in particular the front of the body. So like a wave coming up through your belly, solar plexus and into your chest. Sort of mirroring the movements that we looked at earlier for the breathing. So you may find that you're just naturally taking a breath in here. Some of the time at least. One more time. And then pigeon spreads its wings. And again, feeling that link between what your elbows are doing and the movement in the chest and your ribs, and that whole rising movement from your feet up through belly, solar plexus, chest. Maybe every now and then referring to your breathing as well. This means a lot less strain building in shoulders, upper back, arms and hands. And that in its turn encourages the sense of flow. Changing from this to pushing wave. Very similar dynamic because your elbows do go out just a little bit here and then draw back in as you press forwards, but a little bit more subtle. And this gives this movement a stronger, more resilient feel, both in its imagery, because there's a sort of, it's just pushing, in the physical side of the art, we call it the mechanics of the movement, and in the movement itself, the flow, the energy. There's a tremendous amount of energy in this. If you think back to Pigeon Spreads Its Wings, it's very, very similar in some ways. So there's a lot of energy there, but in a much more compact, almost compressed form. So this has a conditioning element on the flow of energy as well, making it more resilient, more resistant, without ever it becoming tight. One more time. Bringing your hands straight back. So your elbows coming back towards your ribs. A loose fist. Both hands rotating, palm down as you go forwards. And then palm up as you come back. In some ways, an even more economical movement than the previous one. Still aware as much as possible of where the movement comes from, how it builds from feet and hips up through your upper body in one way or another and out through your arms. And again, quite a minimal movement with the arms, which means that they can feel quite full, particularly as you go forwards. And again, this encourages a conditioning towards resilience on the part of both your body and of the flow of energy. One more time going forwards, and then just uncurl your fingers and winding back. In Chinese medicine, of course, that resilience in the energy of the body is seen as being one of the major factors helping our well-being. But I use the term resilience because another aspect of what I've just said is that the energy should flow. So it's not a hardness, it's not a tightness. In a way, it's the consistency and the potential power of water. And then coming back, turning your hands palm down, turning your body, polishing the table. So another sort of broad, almost background intention that we build is this quality of the movement itself, the flow of energy. And again, we practice, these three elements of mind, body and energy really become inseparable. So an intention to move with this flow it's quite possibly going to bring about some kind of change in posture, in the mechanics of the movement, and so on and so forth. Sometimes these things seem to happen by themselves. Of course, they don't. It's not a kind of magical technique because you put the work in previously. Okay, now turning your hands palm up, rooting down, expanding and contracting. Feeling the center of the expansion, contraction in the area between your feet, between your hips, your waist, and the expansion pushing upwards and moving your arms for you, but also at the same time feeling the press down through your hips, through your legs and your feet, really making that contact with the ground, that posture. One more time. And then turning your fingers out and expansion, pushing your arms away from the body. Notice how they swing up. Wild goose. Spreading your fingers out just a little bit. Maybe finding some kind of quality in the image of the bird in flight that adds to the movement. Another thing that will add to that growing resilience and to the flow is to imagine that we're moving through water. And then this time, dropping your hands down, easing forwards just a little bit, let your hands swing in front of your knees, sit back and heart in the clouds. One more time. Letting your hands drop down. Take a moment just to feel the weight of your arms and your shoulders, weight of your body flowing down through your hips. And then focusing on one side, expanding, pushing your arm up. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky, drawing down. Taking that moment to settle in again, feeling the weight of your arms and expanding, contracting through the other side. One more on each side. Bring your hands around, pushing in two directions. So we gradually become more familiar with, more aware of this internal aspect to the movements. Not because the external aspect isn't important, but because we increasingly build the movements from inside out. And this links to this phrase that we find in Tai Chi. When one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion. That there's a strength in that and an ability to move with less strain. And also a movement that feels much more comfortable, much more flowing. Always remembering that one connection with these arts is with Chinese medicine and its interest in this idea of an energy that flows through the body, for that to be harmonious and resilient. And here, extend one foot onto the heel, knees a little bit bent, turning your hands palm up, scooping the seat, looking at the sky. Let your hips drop back, push from the other foot, feel that expansion, belly to solar plexus to chest, all being movements that contribute to this quite tricky movement of coming upright with your arms out just a little bit. Always move as far as you're comfortable moving and only as far as you're comfortable moving. But again, feeling how one way or another, your whole body has a contribution to make to this overall movement. This is something that I feel with the practice spills over into our daily lives. One more time, letting your hands drop down, but fisting them now and then changing to grasping the tiger's ears. Another tricky movement, this movement with the shoulders is quite difficult, but look at what happens. Your arms push out, your rib cage expands and then contracts, and that helps to move your arms. Your weight is staying back, but your upper body is angling forwards, your spine is lengthening. All this is happening before the arms get a look in. And then change it. And change. One more time. Come back to sitting. Okay, so now rubbing your hands together and tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Shoulder and your arm. The other side. And the upper part of your chest. Your belly. And your legs. Push your heels up. Get a bit of circulation back into your legs. And then circling around. And back the other way. Lovely. Let's stand in if you wish, or just carry on in the chair. So all of these are things, everything we've been talked about in terms of essence, are things that we want to try and bring into the standing. And as always, there's what I think of as a technical aspect to this, knowing sort of where you want your hips to be and so on and so forth. But also that more intuitive aspect that we know how it can feel. And so there's a direct instruction and intention to the body saying, this is how I want you to move. And as we become more experienced in these arts, that can also be quite a powerful idea, a powerful approach. So your weight slightly forwards in your feet directly below your hips, and then just let your hips drop down, bringing your hands around Feeling the expansion working from the ground through your center up into your upper body and pressing down. So the standing version of rooting down, perhaps with a real emphasis on this feeling of dropping your center of gravity down. Remembering how your body is able to support itself and the significance of your feet and your legs, but also of your skeleton. That sense of a stronger, more resilient quality in both your body and in the movement itself. Turning the fingers out, standing version toward this. And then parting the clouds. Okay, and shake out. So Tai Chi invites us to reconsider how we make the effort to move, and as I say, spreads that effort through the body. Now, changing the stance, step straight forwards with one foot, keep the width of your step, and begin to transfer your weight. One of the difficulties in Tai Chi, I feel, is that a lot of what I'm talking about goes against our habitual ways of holding ourselves, of moving. And so a sense of attention is really important. There are many things that go on here, and many things that can go wrong, if you like to think of it like that. But then what we can begin to do is identify in certain movements, in all the movements, moments where we reset ourselves. And in terms of this exercise, those moments come when our weight settles into one leg. We remind ourselves to release in our hips, for instance. We bring our attention back more fully to our bodies, to our feet, to our legs, to that connection to the ground beneath us. Become more aware of that process of compression and release in the legs that generates the primary energy that helps us to move. Stops this, what can sometimes feel like a kind of headlong rush in our lives. And then just raising the toes and your heel, finding the body shifting a little bit more over your supporting leg. And then stepping in. Okay. Change sides. Raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. And step through. And going back. Shake it. So, have your right foot forwards. Do a few rounds of fisherman castanet. And then turning into wind blows willows. Then your left foot forwards, remembering those movements through the body that we found in the seated version, and the transfer of the weight, of course, but that little bit of very subtle opening and closing in your chest and your ribs and your upper back, and indeed your spine, that sort of helps to transmit that dynamic energy from your legs into your arms. And so now when we go into Wind Blows the Willows, much less of a strain to bring our arms up a little bit. Chest expanding, pushing your arms out, soften your shoulders. And then with the stepping, dragonfly skims the water. Changing direction. And bringing your feet parallel. Shake out. Okay. Going back to your chair then, finish off. And once again thinking about this aspect of what I described as resetting, turning, again, and something else that I feel we can take into our daily lives with us. Just letting your arms drop and then embrace tiger, return to mountain. And come back to resting. Just open your eyes. Lovely. Well, went very quick for me. Thank you very much, everybody, as always. Enjoy the rest of your day.